Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
So on today's episode of Eating W's, we just have a quick little one for you because we want to talk about the NFL schedule release. We are recording this on Friday the 12th, and the schedule release just happened last night on Thursday the 11th. But before we get into some of our biggest takeaways from that said schedule release, first we have just a couple of tidbits of news for you. Starting off with an extension, the Texans extend guard Shaq Mason on a 3-year deal worth $36 million. Love to see the big men get paid. And then also, Foster Moreau signs a 3-year, $12 million contract with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that signing is that the former Raiders tight end was the one that was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma over the offseason. So good for him to get back on that saddle and get back in the game.
Yep, lots of drama in the NFL, so it's really good to see a feel-good story here and there. And then that's pretty much it. We're in the real dead zone of the NFL right now. Not much news coming post-draft, but we will talk about the schedule release, which of course came post-draft. Starting off, one of my biggest takeaways was, man, does the NFL love Aaron Rodgers, because they gave the New York Jets 5 primetime games this year, which is just insanity, because let's be honest, if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers, the Jets are getting like 2 if they're lucky. Robert Saleh's cool. Sauce Gardner always, of course, brings a little attention, so of course they'd throw him a couple of bones. They wouldn't be one of those teams at the bottom with 1 or 0. But it wouldn't be anything over 2 if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he definitely brings a crowd with him no matter where he goes. That's for sure.
Yep. Sorry about that quick break there. Now we'll jump over to Callan's first big takeaway.
And my big takeaway is the number of primetime games for the number of teams this year. It is very top heavy with 4 teams getting 6 primetime games and over 10 teams getting 5 and 4 primetime games, including the Packers, Vikings, and Jets all getting 5 primetime games. And I find that interesting just because they're all so related in a way with rivals and Aaron Rodgers, and it's kind of surprising to me that the Packers got so many primetime games. That just shows that the fan base still follows, even though that Rodgers is not on the team anymore. They didn't follow him to New York, which I really liked and hope that keeps up through the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Vikings are truly one and the same as the Los Angeles Chargers. So it's really funny to me that the Vikings got 5 primetime games and the Chargers actually got 6 primetime games, because as a Vikings fan, I'll be the first to admit it, we are one of those 2 teams who love to choke it away in primetime. So I don't know why they gave us so many. And I feel like Chargers fans are probably saying the same exact thing, getting 6 primetime games of their own. But just like Callan said, I'm really surprised Green Bay got 5. They must be in on that Jordan Love hype. And then also both the Chicago Bears and Detroit Lions got 4 primetime games, each of their own, which Detroit Lions are a historically bad franchise. The Bears had the worst record last year. It's crazy to see those 2 teams get 4 primetime games each of their own.
And interesting point there is that the NFC North leads all divisions in primetime games with 18 between the 4 teams.
Yeah, just insane, but really top heavy this year. Very few teams on that lower end, and the only 4 teams that have 0 are the Texans, Falcons, Colts, and Cardinals, which also is a little bit of a curveball in my eyes. But okay, and then jumping on to my second point, the NFL is everywhere around the world. Almost, because this is far and away, well, not far and away, but this is the most international games the NFL has ever played, with 5 totals, with 3 London games happening between 2 different stadiums, and then 2 different games happening in Frankfurt Stadium in Germany, which is really cool to see. But one thing that got me was there's no Mexico game, which maybe I'm wrong and just haven't been paying much attention, but I am for sure that the Mexico game was, I shouldn't say for sure, I guess. I'm pretty sure that the Mexico game was the first international game to ever happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that there was one Mexico game a year, but maybe I'm wrong on that because there's definitely not one this year.
There's not usually one a year. I do think it was one of the first ones to be international, at least for a regular season game. I'm waiting to see when they expand to playoff games being international. That's gonna be a doozy there.
That would be so mean.
Or a Super Bowl international.
That might actually kind of be cool.
That would be very interesting, but I think that's almost where we're headed.
I feel like with the way home field advantages in the playoffs work, they could never do a playoff game. But a Super Bowl would be a very interesting one, because then there would be like truly no advantage. It wouldn't even be like one team is closer because you're going overseas. So
99% of the time it's a neutral site anyways.
Yeah.
So
it'd be interesting to see how that would affect attendance and ticket prices, because let's be honest, the NFL's a business. They got one thing on their mind. So
yep.
if they see it fruitful, it might happen.
It could. And so one of my other takeaways is, speaking of playing those games overseas, is that one of the things I find very interesting every year is the teams that travel the most amount of miles throughout the season. And this year it's the Seahawks and the 49ers, both West Coast teams. And that means that there is a lot of East Coast games. And you know how I like my strategy of the West Coast team going to the East Coast to play those early games. They're safe bets. So we'll see how many of the Seahawks and 49ers pull off this year. But I always find that interesting to see the record of those teams that travel so much, and if really there is a jet lag, or if there's really a disadvantage to traveling like that.
I always called him crazy, but I must say it did work out in his favor more than I'd like to admit.
Yeah, it's not always wrong. So, and then on the opposite end of that, the Packers are one of the least traveled team this year, with just under 12,000 total miles. And I believe that will be very helpful for the Green Bay Packers this year, especially with the new quarterback Jordan Love starting this year. I think that the team will be followed very well with the shorter distance, and I think that that's a big reason why they gave us the 5 primetime games.
Yeah, when you're talking about a rookie quarterback or a brand new quarterback, whether first time playing or first time playing in a new place, that's a big help for them, not having to travel too much. Because then even when you do have those away games, like Cal mentioned, you still get some fans coming with you. You don't have to worry about traveling so much. You can just worry about playing. So Jordan Love does have a pretty good chance, or kind of base around him.
Yeah.
God, I hope not. But he might do half decent. I
think we might surprise some people this year.
I sure as shit don't think so, but I don't know. We'll see. And then final takeaway for the day here is that the schedule makers actually like the Minnesota Vikings now. It's crazy what a 13-4 season can do for you. They actually will give you some good games. So the Vikings' entertainment-filled, heart-racing season gets rewarded with, first of all, 5 primetime games, as we mentioned a little bit ago, which, of course, I have a little bit of hesitation there. But then also, far and away my favorite thing is a bye week at week 13. For the past 3 or 4 years, as long as I can remember, I think the latest bye week the Minnesota Vikings have had is somewhere in the area of week 7. Which, when you're a team that's not necessarily in the playoff race, that's not that bad. But the Vikings are always one of those teams that are a sneaky playoff contender or a leading playoff contender. So it's so nice to have that later in the year bye week, get rested up later, get your break more in the middle of the season if you factor in playoffs instead of way early. I really like that. And then also, according to NFL.com, the Vikings are tied for the 18th easiest strength of schedule, so right in the middle of the pack. And in my opinion, got super lucky with the way that our away games fell. Because we faced some really good teams this season, including like the entire AFC West, if I'm not mistaken, which is just a juggernaut of a division, the San Francisco 49ers. But the only team, like top tier team that we face at their home this year is the Cincinnati Bengals in week 15, which is going to be a hell of a game traveling to Cincinnati, but it's an out of division, out of conference even. Week 15 is later in the year. Those games, the it's kind of shaken out already, the standings, so sometimes they're not near as important. Sometimes they're doubly important,
Yeah.
but I'm just really happy to see that when we have to face those really hard teams, they're going to be coming into US Bank.
Yeah, and that Week 15 game that could be flexed to one of the primetime games.
I could easily see that. Yep.
So that definitely could be an option there. I like the flexing where they move the right games to the right primetime slots, so you don't get stupid games in primetime spots. And I think they expanded that to Thursday Night Football this year too.
God, I hope so, because some of those Thursday Night Football matchups were rough. A matchup that we're actually going to get to re-see, another primetime game that's happening this year is the Chicago Bears versus the Washington Commanders on Thursday Night Football.
The old
which
12-7 game
was just horrific to watch, just a mockery of football. But this year, maybe the Bears will do better. Maybe it'll actually be a good game, but
yeah, we'll see.
We'll have to see. I don't have too much confidence in that, but fingers crossed. So that was some of our biggest takeaways from the NFL 2023 schedule release. Just kind of a quick update on the podcast itself, Eating W's. Cal and I are actually going to be out of town on a big family trip to Las Vegas over about the next 2 weeks. So the next 2-3 weeks, you're not going to see any episodes coming from our end, but it's the dead zone of the NFL right now anyway. There's not going to be much to talk about.
Everyone's going on their off-season trip, so we're going on ours.
Exactly. I think the only thing we're really going to be missing is maybe like rookie mini camps, which is a really cool thing, but not a ton of news comes from it.
No, we'll recap it when we come back.
Exactly. So you won't be seeing us for a while, but thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for watching this episode. And until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.